So we are very pleased to have with us Pedro Almodóvar and Antonio Banderas. Please welcome them.
Thank you.
I think they liked it. So in addition to this extraordinary film, Pedro designed the festival poster this year, which is beautiful. So we want to thank him for that as well. Carla is here to help with translation. I'm just going to start with a question for Pedro. I think I have to start with the obvious question here. You have dealt with autobiography, or as it's referred to in the film, autofiction, throughout your career, but I think never so directly and provocatively as in this film. So I'm wondering if you can say a little bit about your approach to drawing on your own life, but not reflecting it directly, and how that was different for this film compared to some of your other works that draw on your life as well.
Sí, no, realmente yo creo que toda mi biografía está contada en las 21 películas que he hecho antes.
I think my entire biography is actually told in the 21st films that I've done before this one.
Generalmente estaba detrás de personajes que no eran directores y a veces no eran tampoco hombres. Estaba reflejado de un modo oblicuo.
But I'm actually really reflected in kind of an oblique way because I'm actually standing behind characters that are perhaps women or that are not even film directors.
But really, this is the first time that I took the reference of myself, and I look at myself, and every research that I did for the script, it was inside me. So it's a question that is not exactly an autobiography. But in any case, I'm reflected in a more intimate way in this movie, more than in anyone. So, because today, for example, a journalist asked me about the spectator, if they should think that I'm watching Pedro's life, or if I mind that, or if. And then, the spectator is free, and what I try is that the spectator should be moved and understand the story that I'm telling. For me, it's not that important if they think that I'm talking about me or this is my portrait or not, because in the process of writing, at the beginning I was thinking about myself, and also in the following pages. I was always present. But there is a moment like when you are like in the 20 pages of the script that everything you are writing is mixed with fiction. And there is a moment beyond that when you are cuando has hecho ya las 3/4 partes del guión.
When you're about 3/4 of the way through the script.
Then the fiction is who it rules the narration, and reality disappears. And in that moment, I need to be, or I need to feel believable, but in a cinematic way, even that it doesn't represent reality. So my life is completely mixed with fiction. And when I say my life is not my proper life, and also when I say that I'm very familiar, everything that appears in the movie is very familiar to me, it's because I made mine the memories of everyone surround me. I mean, in the movie, sometimes I stole memories of my sisters, of my brother, of some friends, or just the period that I was living. So everything is familiar to me, but it doesn't mean that I lived everything that is in the movie. Actually, there are many things that I that I never experienced. I mean, I didn't live when I was a kid, in a cave. No, but I know the feeling of that guy, because we migrate from La Mancha to Extremadura, and I know what it means to just to leave your hometown and to go to another place in a precarious way. I never felt in love when I was a kid of a painter and builder, but I could. At that moment I knew about what was my sexuality at that moment. So I never do or had a heroin experience. But during the 80s, I was surrounded by many close friends that they were into that. So I know I have enough information about that. Some other things are completely part of my life. For example, la escena de la mortaja.
The scene where we're preparing the mother for death, where she talks about her death.
La experiencia también de tener que cortar de tajo un amor cuando todavía estaba viva la pasión.
And the experience of also having to end an affair when passion was still alive and well.
Pero por ejemplo, no he tenido la experiencia de que ese amor volviera 32 años después.
And I haven't had the experience of that love returning 32 years
Pero
later.
esa es la buena parte de la ficción, que puedes escribirlo y vivirlo a través de los actores.
And that's the nice thing about fiction, is that you can write it and then experience it through the actors.
And I enjoyed very much that meeting. I loved them. But I didn't experience it in my life. But I experienced in the shooting, which is like a parallel life for me.
So I wanted to bring Antonio into this discussion, and this idea of playing a character that is on some level rooted in Pedro's life, and there are many aspects about Salvador that invite us to think about Pedro: hair, wardrobe among them, but there are other things that are clearly not. And can you say a little bit about developing this character and making it a fully inhabited character and not in any way an imitation?
Well, first of all, we have been friends for almost 40 years now, and we have done 8 movies together. But we have a relationship. Our friendship has certain boundaries in a way. Pedro is a very, very private person. I never try just to, trespass those boundaries. Was being always very respectful to his private life. So it was surprising to me when I read the script for the first time, because there were some confessions done there, certain aspects of his personality that I didn't know. I didn't know that he wanted to close certain circles in his life that were open, certain wounds, with the mother, with actors, with cinema, with life itself, with an ex-boyfriend. So it was surprising. And then immediately it came to me pretty much what he was just explaining before. There are certain areas of the movie that are real and certain areas that are fictional. But then the next thought in my mind, it may not coincide with him, but is this: are we only the things that we have done and that we have said, or we are also the things that we wanted to say and we never said, the things that we wanted to do and we never did? And I think in this case, this Pedro Almodóvar's movie is more Almodóvar than Almodóvar. Because in a way, he completes certain areas of that puzzle of his life by making this film. And I felt used in a very beautiful way to just establish certain reconciliation with his life and coming to terms with himself. And it was a beautiful side of the movie for me. Though I attacked the character also, using some personal experiences too.
The events in the film sort of begin with the filmmaker character Salvador revisiting a film that he made 32 years earlier, and I'm wondering if the two of you talked about films that you worked on together. I'm thinking in particular of Law of Desire, which is actually a film from exactly 32 years ago, in which, as it happens,
Coincidentally.
and that is a film that has some similarities with this one.
You know, sabor is a wonderful name. It's a wonderful word, and it's a wonderful title too. I remember an American writer called Lucia Berlin in a collected story books. He was almost bilingual because he was teaching Spanish in Mexico and in other places, and she make a commentary about the Spanish language, and she talked about a bolero, a song, a torch song called Sabor a mí, which is like taste of me, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And she was fascinated that there is a language where the people tienen sabor.
Have taste.
Porque en la lengua, en el inglés, eso es imposible.
Because in English that is impossible, because you're actually talking about the person, him or himself tasting as something.
Nosotros sí tenemos esa posibilidad. Todo tiene sabor en la lengua española.
But in Spanish we do have that possibility. Everything has, if you like, a taste, a flavor.
Todo lo que está vivo.
Everything that's alive.
Y yo me refiero, yo creo que al sabor de dos amantes.
And in that, I'm referring to the flavor of two lovers.
O sea, todos los sentidos nos recuerdan a la persona que hemos amado, pero aquí hablo, no es un amor de caníbales, exactamente, pero me refiero al sabor de otra persona.
And I'm referring to sort of all the senses are involved in the love of another person, and I'm not talking about them being cannibals, for example, but we're talking about sort of everything that reminds you of that other person.
But it's true that the period when that happened, when the monologue happens, and the relation with the actor, it was exactly that period, 85, 86, when I was doing Matador of Law of Desire. So, because the three male characters, Antonio's and also Federico's and the actor, these three male characters, they were shaped in the decade of the 80s. Mm-hmm. So they belong to that period, very hedonistic, full of freedom, because it was immediately after the Franco died and the democracy came to Spain. So they are very representative of that decade. And for me, you know, that moment, it was full of, when I say freedom in every senses. Of course, sexual freedom, and of course there were a lot of drugs around us. You know, all that things that we couldn't experience before, just immediately before that.
Pedro, I'm wondering if you can say a bit about the structure of the film. I think, especially in your later films, we've seen a lot of many of your films moving away from just a straightforward linear structure, and this one especially seems to have this very kaleidoscopic structure that moves around in time and uses memory as a principle for organizing the film. And I'm wondering if you can talk about whether this structure is something that emerges from you as you write, or do you play around with it as you edit?
No, viene cuando la estructura siempre es el resultado del guión.
The structure is always a result of the script.
Y no siempre corresponde con el primer borrador del guión.
And it's not always there from the very first draft of the script.
Suele ser en las sucesivas repeticiones.
It's once I repeat the various drafts that then the structure comes.
Cuando eliges la historia que quieres contar, el modo que quieres contarla.
Once you decide which story is the one you want to tell and how it is that you want to tell it.
En el caso de Pain and Glory, la estructura llegó, no quiero parecer tacky, pero llegó con un movimiento que se parece mucho a la corriente del agua, de un modo natural y fluido.
Yeah, the structure for Pain and Glory, and I don't want to sound tacky, but it came sort of from the idea of flowing
water. If I sound
water.
tacky, it doesn't matter anyway.
It came from the idea of flowing water.
So I start writing this sequence, the very first sequence, when he's under the water, where because of the ungravity, he's in the best situation of the day, because there is not any muscle tension. And this is something that I used to do the summertime when I was before starting writing. And after doing it every day, then I asked someone to make a picture of me in that situation, because I thought, you know, I mean, in one hand, you just live your life. Very close to that, you think like a filmmaker. So immediately after being having this kind of pleasure, I thought, this is a good starting. This is a good image for a movie. I wanted to be sure, and then I asked someone to take a picture of me down the water, and I found it interesting. So I started writing why he is like that, why the big scarf, and then, you know, the water drives me to another water, which is the river. And then immediately appears just the memory of my childhood when I was with my mother and the neighbors washing in the river. Immediately after, I took the same character in the same hotel that has the swimming pool. And then I was keeping on with this contemporary character and reflecting myself. And when with the river, when I discovered that I could alternate my contemporary life with the memories of my childhood, that gave me immediately, esta alternancia, me dio inmediatamente la clave para poder continuar escribiendo.
That back and forth then is really what gave me the key that allowed me to then continue writing.
Porque yo no quería hacer una película sobre alguien que se queja de los dolores que tiene.
Because I really didn't want to make a movie about someone who's just complaining about the pain that they're suffering.
Ni quería sobre la soledad del personaje de Antonio, sobre su aislamiento, etc.
Nor did I want to write a movie about Antonio's character's solitude or his isolation.
Al aparecer de un modo natural, en mi infancia encontré que esa alternancia era la clave para la historia.
So when the connection, a very natural connection to the memories of my childhood came up, I realized that that would be the most natural way to tell the story.
Porque por un lado nos da mucha información acerca del niño que fue.
Because it gives us a lot of information about the boy he once was.
Y sobre todo me permite introducir la luz y el barroquismo de una infancia como la que él tuvo.
And it allows me to sort of introduce the light and the Baroque character of the infancy that he had.
Incluso para mí es muy importante al final, o sea, descubrir que estas memorias de su infancia en un determinado momento le salvan de la situación que está viviendo.
And it's very important for me, for example, to discover by the end that these memories that he's having actually come to save him from the moment that he's living.
Porque su dependencia no es de la heroína.
Because his addiction is not to heroin.
Su auténtica adicción es al hecho de hacer películas.
His actual addiction is to making films.
Y el mayor de los dolores que siente es la impresión de que físicamente no está preparado a volver a rodar nunca más.
And the biggest pain he's actually feeling is that sensation that he has that he's never going to be able to shoot again.
Por eso, además, en el hecho de tomar heroína hay un sutil elemento de suicidio.
So there's something in his taking heroin that there's an element of suicide, a wish for
Subtle.
suicide, a subtle.
O sea, cuando un hombre de 60 años empieza a tomar heroína, es consciente de que está corriendo un grave riesgo.
Yes, because when a man who's in his 60s decides he's going to take heroin, he's quite conscious of the fact that he's taking a risk,
Y a él no le importa.
and he doesn't care.
Y lo que salva al personaje es cuando llega a sus manos la acuarela, y
So-
con la acuarela llega el recuerdo de cómo fue hecha.
So what really saves him is when he receives the watercolor, and then when he receives the watercolor, he remembers how that watercolor was made.
Por primera vez en los últimos 4 años siente la necesidad rotunda de contar esa historia.
And so for the first time in 4 years, he feels the absolute need to tell that story.
Entonces, inmediatamente cuando llega a su casa empieza a escribir febrilmente.
So when he returns home, he starts writing like a madman.
En ese momento él está salvado porque desea contar una historia.
And at that point, he has saved himself because he now desires to write a story.
Entonces, esa pasión que hacía tiempo que no la sentía es lo que realmente salva al personaje.
And that passion, which he had not felt in many years, is really what saves the character.
Okay, I'm going to open it up in a minute. I'm just going to ask one question to both of you. As you mentioned, Antonio, the two of you have a working relationship that spans decades in many films, although there was a period of, I think, maybe 20 years where you were not working together. I'm wondering if you can just compare the working relationship on this film versus, when you first started working together. How has your working relationship changed?
It have changed during all these years. And especially I think he has changed in 2 different periods. When I re-encountered with Pedro as a director-actor, because we have been friends for all of these years, but it was in the Esquina 11. It was 9 years ago. And I arrived to the project after 22 years without working together, trying to show him that actually I learned a lot during all of those years, that I just got a new way to just act, that I got more experience in front of the camera, that I was more self-assured in front of it. There's a number of things, and I put them on the table, and I said, this is what I am now. And so after a week of rehearsals, he said to me, Antonio, all of these things that you're bringing with you now, I cannot use them really. And he made a very interesting question that has been floating in my mind for 9 years. He says, "Where are you?" And so at that time, you can take, that thing and you can react against that thing in many different ways. But at that time I said, why is so hard, I mean, I have my experience, I'm going to just put it there. I have this idea of what the character should be. And my idea and his ideas didn't coincide all the time. So we shoot the movie. There was a certain tension by the time that we were shooting the movie. Never was dramatic because we are friends, among other things, But something happened, when I saw the movie with an audience for the first time. It was in the Toronto Film Festival. And I was watching the movie and I was thinking, oh my God, how he managed to actually take a character from the inside of me that I didn't even know I had. And then I started a process of being humble and thinking I have to actually open my ears and my eyes and my soul to people that I trust. And I do trust him. I don't feel only love for Pedro, which is what I do. I feel love because he's my friend, but I admire him and I respect him. And I was thinking, am I going to have another opportunity in my life to actually, start the process of making a movie with him in a completely different way? And that came 9 years after. So when I received Pain and Glory, I saw that opportunity. And in the middle of those 9 years, a lot of things happened. And I had a heart attack 2.5 years ago that actually positioned me in a completely different way, in the way because I am as an artist as I am as a person. And that thing brought to me a way to look at life in a different way. I saw death very close, and the important things really came to the surface, and all those things that I thought they were important, but they weren't, they just sunk. They went to hell. And he detected that. As soon as we were at the rehearsal time, he said, I don't know how to describe this thing that happened to you after your cardiac event, but it's something that I would like to use for your character, so don't hide it. Don't try just to overcome yourself and just present yourself as the Antonio Banderas that everybody knows, more athletic and more that. No, this is good. This is good, use it. And I started using it, and I started going from the scratch. I didn't want to use all the tools that I have been using for acting in the last 10, 15 years. I was just trying to descend with two different questions, very clear questions and very simple ones. What do you want to tell? What is the story that you want to tell, and why you call me to do it? And from the beginning, we start solving these two questions, and we created a character that actually was different to anything that I have done before in my life. It has to do with another space, another universe of my acting career that I didn't know. It was very frightening for moments because I was not allowed to use my tricks. I was just searching in some other fields, and but at the end, we both got in the mud together. And that is the space where we could create something that is worth while, for both of us. So it has been probably the most interesting work of my life, and I opened my eyes really for the future in a completely different way, sometimes a heart attack is one of the best things that can happen in your life.
Yes. No, pues it is true that I saw one picture of Antonio after the heart attack, and I saw just a mask of pain. I felt sorry for him, but as I was thinking about him as the protagonist of this movie, Pain and Glory, then es que resulta muy duro decir que ese ataque al corazón a mí me venía bien como director, pero es cierto que era así.
It's very hard to say that his heart attack actually was really good for me as a director, but the truth is that's how it was.
No, quiero decir que la experiencia en el dolor de Antonio y que estaba muy presente en esa foto me indicaba lo apropiado que era llamarle.
And what I really mean is when I saw that picture of him and I could really read pain in his face, I realized that it was really appropriate for me to be able to reach out and call him.
Porque lo último que uno piensa de Antonio es en el sufrimiento.
Because the last thing you think about when you think of Antonio is suffering.
Quiero decir, es una persona tan llena de vida, tan intensa en todo lo que hace, o sea, lo que aquí llamáis bravura, que le ha caracterizado en todos sus personajes, que no es la imagen que uno tiene de alguien doliente que está en su casa, pegado a la cama o a la mesa de escritorio de su casa.
So, because really the image that you have of Antonio, especially here in this country, is of someone who's alive, who's intense, what you call bravura, and you don't really think of someone who's laid out in pain in his bed next to his bedstand.
Naturalmente él conocía muchas de las partes del guión, las reconocía porque las había vivido de cerca.
And he, of course, understood a lot of the things that were in the script because he had lived through them.
Pero yo le dije, I said to him just before shooting, this is something that I never allowed to anyone in my career. But well, Antonio, if you need to imitate me in some moment because this is the easier way for you to do it, then you have my permission to do it. And he answered me that he prefers not. And I was happy because it's very weird just to have someone in front of you that it is imitating you. So I absolutely prefer that way. So, I have to say that when I was shooting, I didn't have the feeling that I was like shooting about my life. I have a big distance. And I was a director, directing an actor, and even the house it was a replica of my own, the own place that I'm living. For me, it was very clear when I was in the studio shooting and when I was at home. I never confused that. Only, I mean, I asked him because it was important for the spectator to see that this man has a big problem in the back for the surgery. Then I told him, well, and I did it before, look at me when I'm entering a taxi and how I get out, because it's not the normal way. It's very aparatoso.
It's sort of very clumsy and cumbersome.
And this is the only moment when he really had to imitate me, because that gives clear information about his back. And also when he's trying to look for something in the floor, he never go directly to the floor. He used to put a pillow and after just take it. You know, this is a kind of physical information about his condition. But the rest that I must say that I was the first one to be amazed by the performance of Antonio. He changed completely comparing to the other movies that we did together. And doing something completely new, and even without my explanation. And I think that Antonio, well, he's present here, but anyway, this is what I really think. He has an incredible capacity to be impregnate, in this case of me. And even that process was perhaps unconscious. But you know what happens, it was the opposite what happened in real life, that I see myself imitating him in some moments of the movie.
That's awesome.
Yes, and I discovered that because, for example, I give you an example. When you are waiting at the door for your former lover, Federico, you just make very small gesture of being impatient and waiting. I love that, and I do it sometimes, just being myself,
After you saw the
being
movie.
myself through Antonio. Because, I mean, I found it that I love to be the person that he was performing, that it was not exactly me. But I love that. So the case now is that I'm in different cases, in different moments, that I am imitate him in the movie, trying to be myself.
Okay, we're going to take a couple of questions. Yeah, right there.
Can you tell us what were the most important films when you were a boy? What were the films that affected you the most and transformed you?
You know, during early 60s and late 50s, that I was living in a very small town, you know, they used to show many spaghetti westerns. That it was not exactly the best formation for a director. But also at the same time, I could see Bergman's movie. I remember with my brother to go to see the Fountain, the Fountain Virgin.
The Virgin Spring.
Virgin Springs at the age of 10. And some movies, we also saw many movies from Mexico. Very, fantasy, science fiction, genre movies. But also, mixed with that, very kids and camp movies. They mixed also the Mexican period of Buñuel. And then, very young, at that age of 10 to 12, I could see El Ángel Exterminador, Ensayo para un crimen, La vida de Archibaldo de la Cruz. This has two different names.
It's the exterminating angel and The death of Archibaldo
the
Cruz.
life of Archibaldo de la Cruz, or in Spain we call it ensayo para un crimen, which is the rehearsal for a crime. And curiously, this is the part of the filmography of Buñuel that is my favorite, the Mexican films. And also I used to see many of Elia Kazan or Tennessee Williams adaptations to the cinema that also impressed me a lot. Because, for example, I made a mention of Splendor in the Grass. At that moment when I saw, as a kid, Splendor in the Grass, I thought that they were talking about me, that they were talking about the type of living that I have to do in that rural place. Porque vivíamos bajo esa misma vigilancia de la que vive Natalie Wood.
Because we lived under that same sort of, what will people say, vigilance that Natalie Wood is submitted to.
O sea, la misma opresión sobre todo por el qué dirán los demás.
Yes, so the same kind of oppression around the worry about what will people say.
Y la misma represión sexual.
And the same kind of sexual repression.
Y sobre todo la represión en general acerca de cualquier tipo de actitud libre.
And repression in general towards any kind of liberatory attitude.
I was a kid at that moment. When Splendor, I was 12, and I thought that, oh my God, this is the life that is waiting for me. Because I was very identified with Warren Beatty's sister, the one that used to go every night with a lot of men, that drinks a lot, smoke a lot, and also drives in an incredible speed. So I thought, I'm afraid that this girl represents what will be my future. It was this mixing of some camp movies, very bad movies, but funny movies, or sometimes I remember also when I was 14, I remember very well the night that I saw The Night, La Notte, by Michelangelo Antonioni. And even they are not especially like kids' movies, but not at all, just the opposite. But I always have a link with these movies. En La Noche, Antonioni habla sobre el aburrimiento en la sociedad, en la alta sociedad milanesa.
In La Notte, Antonioni is talking about the boredom in the high society, high Milanese society.
Yo no conocía Milán, no sabía nada de esa sociedad, de la alta burguesía milanesa, pero sabía mucho del aburrimiento.
And I did not know, I was never in Milan, I didn't know anything about the high bourgeoisie, but I knew a lot about boredom.
Just living in that place. So that was the way for me to identify with the speech of Antonioni in La Notte. There was always a way for me that included me in these difficult and very adult movies. So I was shaped with spaghettis, western, with awful. En los años 50 eran las películas se llamaban no rancheras,
las cabareteras.
Sí,
the cabareteras, the Mexican cabaretera genre, which is sort of the fallen woman genre.
That it was a genre itself. But also Antonioni's movies and Orson Welles and Elia Kazan and Buñuel a lot. And yes, when I went to Madrid, that I was 18 years old, then I started going every day to the Cinematheque, and then it was when I could see every movie in a kind of not so casual way. Then I started just watching the new wave, the new realism, the German expressionism. And that was, the Cinematheque was my real school at the moment.
Basically everything.
Basically what?
Everything.
Basically everything, yes. I'm very eclectic. I have como un gusto muy ecléctico.
I have a very eclectic taste.
Actually,
Yes.
Pedro is doing a talk on Sunday on cinema and his favorite films. So that.
Así que el domingo vas a hacer la...
Oh yeah.
Yes, so we'll have more of it. We'll have more of it on
Yes.
Sunday. I think we have time for only one final question. So let's go here. Yeah, in the blue shirt. Yes.
Since we're doing the Q&A, could you talk about the Q&A in the film? Do you have anything to say about, film restoration or, the question that you hate in Q&As? Or...
Ya que estamos en un Q&A, que se puede hablar sobre el Q&A, el coloquio en la película.
Sí. Pues yo estaba copiando algo, primeramente, que es la presencia universal y absoluta del teléfono móvil.
One of the things that I was copying or thinking about was the absolute ubiquitous presence of the cell phone in our lives.
Y algo que ya había visto que lo habían hecho en algún programa de televisión española, de la televisión española, en realities, por ejemplo.
And I had seen something like that in Spanish reality TV.
Que encontraba especialmente de mal gusto y muy, muy tacky.
That I found it to be of particularly bad taste and very, very tacky.
¿No? Y es cuando el periodista, naturalmente son programas lo que llamamos programas del corazón, tabloides. El periodista está recibiendo una llamada de alguien de quien está hablando y entonces lo pone en altavoz y lo pone cerca de su micrófono para que el resto del programa y el resto del país pueda oírlo. Lo cual me parece de pésimo gusto, pero me parecía que era muy cinematográfico.
So, and this is sort of, again, in these kind of tacky programs, oftentimes sort of programs that deal with matters of the heart, where the reporter actually has the person on the phone and he puts them close to the microphone so that the rest of the audience can hear it. And I think it's just terrible and of terribly bad taste, but I thought it was very cinematographic.
No, quiero decir, a mí me inspira, en la vida real, me inspira o lo mejor o lo peor de lo que veo y de lo que oigo.
And so what actually inspires me in my real life is either the best of what I see or the worst of what I see.
In this case, it's the worst what I see. And also, Salvador is not, I mean, for that reason, the assistant she feels strange that, and then Salvador say that he will go to the Q&A because from many years, I mean, her work, it was just to say no to the interviews and all that. He became, in the movie, almost a misanthropist. But also, in the case that they were very, very stoned, of course, he didn't want to be in the presence of anyone in that state. But at the same time, él corresponde con las preguntas que empiezan a hacerle. O sea, se olvida del artificio que está utilizando.
So at some point he sort of gets absorbed by the questions that they're asking him and he forgets about the artifice that he's involved in.
Y el hecho de haber tomado drogas le hace estar muy sincero y, digamos, menos controlado.
And the fact that he's high makes him be extremely sincere and not as controlled.
De ese modo, sin darse cuenta, empieza a hablar del personaje de Alberto y le dice a través de esa conversación, cosa que no era algo que no tenía, que no era planeado, le dice lo peor que podía escuchar Alberto.
And because he's high, he begins to speak quite sincerely and he begins to say things about Alberto which he otherwise would not have said and which, of course, Alberto did not quite need to hear.
Entonces, toda la secuencia me sirve y también para darle un tono un poco más jocoso a la situación, pero es del modo en que, sin darse cuenta, se ve abocado a decirle por primera vez a Alberto por qué no le gustaba su actuación y que misteriosamente con el tiempo había mejorado. Cosa que es verdad que el tiempo influye en el modo de ver las películas.
And so in this sort of very playful way, he's telling Alberto things that he wished he would have told him, and that are, of course, in fact, true, and especially the fact that his performance has gotten better over the years, which is also something that actually happens, that a performance can get better across the years.
Por lo menos a mí me pasa. Quiero decir, no solo con mis películas, sino con las películas de los demás.
And I actually have this experience not just with my films, but with other people's films as well.
El tiempo es el peor enemigo de las películas y la mejor medida.
Time is the worst friend of films, but also the best measure.
Y yo le estoy muy agradecido al tiempo que ha respetado mis películas.
And I'm very thankful to time that it's respected my films.
Antonio, did you want to add anything about that scene?
If I want to add
Yeah.
something, well, no, it's. I think
You can tell everything, Antonio.
no, but I think it's very clear that for 40 years I have been working with a person that I respect, that I admire, and I love, as I said to you before. Only these 8 movies that I have done with Pedro Almodóvar justify a career. If I wouldn't have done anything else, I would be satisfied. Yeah.
Well, thank you both. It's an
Thank you,
amazing
thank you.
performance and an amazing film. So thank you both for being here, and thank you for being.